Brought to you by BedroomBattlefields.com, this is the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. So, armed with a beer, Ed, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing this evening?
I'm very well, thank you, Matthew. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you're a man after my own heart. As we got on the call there, and there's a video that we could see each other. I don't record it, but just a big tin of beer getting poured into a glass. That's what I like to see. So, you like a beer and a wine? I mean, I don't wish to introduce you to the listener as some sort of alcoholic,
no,
but
it's okay. My job is beer and wine.
Yeah.
I work for a wine merchant, so I enjoy a glass of something. It tends to just be one or two when I have it. But yeah, when I was younger, I used to enjoy it a bit too much, maybe. But these days, I tend to go for a bit more quality over quantity, which is, I guess, a bit like how I like my gaming.
What do you think of, like, I don't wish to be our overall topic of discussion this evening, but like alcohol in the hobby, like I do hear some folks, they like to paint with a beer or a wine. It's not something I've really done, and I don't know if I trust myself to, like I'm a bad enough painter sort of thing. Is it something do you enjoy a wee tipple?
It's not something typically I've got a cup of tea next to me when I'm painting and modelling. I think maybe having one would be fine. I probably have had one in the past and probably would have one, but I don't think I'd go beyond one because, as you say, like there's a certain level of coordination required, and getting the wrong side of 40, my eyesight and bits and pieces. It's it's not terrible, it's not bad, but like after a long day, it's tired, and you have a couple of beers. Yeah, I think my coordination perhaps would not produce the results I'm after. But, it's certainly, I think that the time and place for a couple of beers is when you're around the table with some good friends. And I've got a couple of friends who we meet once or twice a month, and we play actually a lot of Space Widows and a little bit of Sword Widows. Usually a three-way battle, and there's always a bottle or a few cans of something opened to share between us. It's not a heavy drinking session, but just a couple of beers each, and roll some rocks and see what comes out of it all, and have a good crack.
I do remember, like, back when I was kind of dabbling with coming back into the hobby. I mean, this is going back to 6 or 7 years ago, possibly more. But I'd got Descent. I don't know if you've heard of Descent. It's like a dungeon crawling miniature board game, and I'd just been like sort of googling like Hero Quest, modern day Hero Quest alternatives, and obviously I hadn't come back at that time, so I ended up with this game, and it was like Friday night. This is before we had the kid, and so my wife got in on the Friday night, and I'd had a couple of beers already, and I'm saying, we'll give this a bash tonight. And by the time I'd got it set up and I started flicking through the rules, and when you do start to, like, now I'm used to, I mean, I'm still not very great at quickly interpreting rules, but your brain starts to adjust to it, and you start to pick out wee bits and pieces. But at this time, I'm going in totally cold. 6 or 7 beers down, I end up on YouTube. I've got YouTube sitting there. When you Google a board game rule, it's always the guy. What's his name now? It's not Ron. It's like, it's always this same guy. He's really good.
Right.
Suddenly he's talking me through it.
I'm not a big board gamer, but yeah.
So he's talking me through it, and I'm sitting there with a beer, and I think you end up looking at the clock. It's like 10 o'clock, and I said, look, we're not going to get started with this now, so put it away. And I think that happened like on consecutive Fridays for about a month, and then I just never played it. So there's a lesson in there somewhere. But
I think there's a level where a few helps facilitate the fun. A few too many can send the fun off the rails. I think there's definitely a balance to be had. And I'd like to think I'm fairly good at finding that balance these days. As I say, perhaps when I was younger, I wasn't quite so good. But, the things we learn in our misspent youth, eh?
I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to bring you on as some sort of like, let's talk about alcohol just because that's your job when you're drinking a beer. But
it's fine. Like you mentioned when we were just about to get started that we had to reschedule a couple of times, and one of those times was because I had to go and run a whiskey tasting. So yeah, I mean, it's something that I do have a passion for. I do love, but it's a passion in moderation, rather than a little bit too much over exuberation.
So you did mention a couple of games there when you were talking about playing. So Space Weirdos, that seems to be something you're right interested in at the moment. Then how did you?
I love that. That's actually the game that got me back, that pulled me back into miniatures. A couple of years ago now, I was GMing. I was running games for a couple of different groups of friends. A lot of sort of OSR, that's old school Renaissance, old school Revolution games. Things like Into the Odds, Mouse Ritter, Cairn. And I got to a point where I had a little bit of burnout, and I wanted someone else to run a game, and no one else in my groups was prepared to run games. I was like, okay, well, I need to take a break for my mental health and my space. So I'm going to step away from this. I want something else to do, and to think about and to play with. So when I was a kid, I used to love playing with those little toys, those little models, and I came across Space Weirdos on Wargame Vault, and it was a little £5 game, not even £5, $5 game. I was like, well, that looks interesting. I could just like grab a handful of miniatures from somewhere. I could give miniature gaming a go. I know I don't want to get back into big Warhammer, full-on Warhammer, because it's not something that interests me. I've heard a lot of things about Games Workshop which I didn't like. I had some issues with it when I left the gaming scene when I was younger anyway, but those issues seems to have been exacerbated over time. So it offered an opportunity to play a game that was very kind of low maintenance, very cheap to get into. And yeah, I kind of loved it and was like, right, okay, let's try and play some other things. So I started looking around for some other games to play as well. But Space Weirdos would still be my go-to. Love that game.
So before we get into the old origin story, I mean, because we're on this subject, you picking the game up. So you bought that, and you already, I take it, you have folk that you were playing like RPG games with anyway. Yeah. So was it pretty? It was a low barrier, I take it then, to get this on the table.
Yeah, pretty low. I went to I had some models, but they were all in my parents' loft. And I live south of London, they live north of London. I was like, right, well, I want to get this on the table as soon as possible. So I went to Troll Trader and I bought a couple of units off of Troll Trader. I bought some Space Wolves and some Dark Eldar because I was like, yeah, they're cool. I remember liking Space Wolves when I was younger. Dark Eldar came in just as I was leaving, so I never got a chance to really play with them. I was like, yeah, that's fun. And then I made some scenery, made some homemade scenery, and then just got a couple of mates to come over, and we just started giving it a go. And because it's played with RPG dice, I had all the dice I needed. I am a bit of a dice goblin, so I have a lot of dice. So yeah, it was as I say, it was low barrier of entry, and just really fast and easy to play and a lot of fun. And had a system, the dice system, just it feels very elegant the way it works. Both the maths behind it and the way it works when you shift up and down dice types depending on the situation you're in. It felt very intuitive, and it means that every now and then we'll reference something, be like, oh, well, just double check that rule. But very rarely, but maybe once or twice in a game, and it's because it's like 16 pages of A5. It takes 2 seconds to find the rule, I like that for my RPG games as well as my tabletop war games. Like I want to, if I need a rule, I need to find it fast, or we need to make a ruling and move on. And having these big tomes, I just don't have time for it. It just doesn't interest me. I love that people do and people get really into it, but I want to play lots of different games. And so, being too complex is a barrier for me.
In previous episodes, I've spoke about playing different games, and there's a few rule sets that I like that are sci-fi games, but I've come round now to I've got that sci-fi skirmish game book. It's actually sitting there in front of me because I'm planning another game out of there. So are you I mean, it was potentially you that introduced me to this, actually. So I was just going to ask, and the answer is obviously yes. As great as the rules sound, you want to be doing something, don't you? So are you cherry picking scenarios from that book then? Yeah,
I love that book. That book's amazing. So that I'm in your Discord community, which is a lovely community. So everyone's so friendly and welcoming there. But the other community that I tend to be quite involved in is the Space Weirdos community, which is a Weirdos Discord. And that book, I bought it on a whim, and my wife works for Waterstone, so I get half-price books, which is great. So I'd just seen it. I was like, oh, Rosie, can you just pick this up for me? So it was great value for me. And I just started reading it. I was like, wow, this is great. This just offers so much more for this really light game. Suddenly I can build on this, and we can make scenarios go on from each other and evolve and get really, really creative. And so then I introduced it to the community there, and it's become a bit of a legend of a book in that community. I can't remember whether I mentioned it in your Discord or whether someone else mentioned it, and then I immediately chimed in and went, "Oh, that's an amazing book." But yeah, it's if anyone plays skirmish gaming, particularly sci-fi skirmish gaming, John Lamb's had sci-fi scenarios, skirmish scenarios. It's a must buy. It's honestly, I think it's about 12 or 14 quid or so. So I've got it half price, and it's one of my most used gaming books. Really,
I've got set up here for a game, and hopefully in the next week we're doing the Strut Your Stuff scenario. Don't know if you've played that one. So there's an objective in the middle of the table, and it's quite open ground, and there's a lot of built-up terrain on the outskirts. And the idea is that you've got to get somebody onto this objective, which is easy, but you've got to keep them alive because they're very vulnerable at that point.
Yeah.
And one thing, I don't know if John came up with this or if he's borrowed it from somewhere else, but it's such a great... I've never seen it before. I'm very inexperienced anyway, but the way the game finishes, and this is obviously to stop you just tactically keeping someone in the wing and making a last minute, because turn 6 or whatever's coming up, so you can just get somebody there. So he's got this. I'm going to butcher it because I've not got the book open, but basically when you're on, I think it's the second last turn, it's something along the lines of, okay, roll a dice. If you roll say a 1 or 2, the game ends immediately on turn 5. If you roll a 2 and 3, you've got one more turn. If a 3 and 4, you've got 2 more turns, etc., etc. So it's this like nobody really knows when the game's going to end. So that things like that are just brilliant ideas.
Yeah, that's added. I love that added uncertainty. I mean, it's actually, again, Space Widow says that built in. You play 4 turns, you roll a die. On a 5 or a 6, the game ends. On 4 or under, you play a 5th turn. And it just means that, even if you're playing the standard, scenario game where you've got to be on scenarios for the final turn, objectives, sorry, not scenarios, standard objective scenario. You've got to be on the objective at the end of the turn and end of the game. Well, you don't know when that's going to be. So do you hold back or do you push forwards? It's, Yeah, it's that added uncertainty, and you suddenly you're on it, and then actually no, there's another round to go, and they are sending their troll over at you, and you've got your last guy. Are they going to stand up? And yeah, I love that. Anything which pushes decision making at the table interests me. That's those decisions create the narratives. I know you're very big on narrative gaming. A little bit hard on competitive gaming sometimes, which I find interesting. But
we could certainly get into that. I was just going to ask, whilst we're on the subject, the Sci-Fi Skirmish Scenarios book, are there any scenarios off the top of your head that you remember that you particularly enjoyed, that you thought gave a really good?
There's one which we had a lot of fun with, and I'm possibly going to run it again next weekend with a guy who's new to the game, who will be his first time playing, where you've got a bunch of gangers and you've got to try and blow up. I think it's an intersection. We played it a while ago. I need to reread it, but there's a fence that dissects the board, and the gangers have got to try and blow up the fence so they can infiltrate through. And then you've got sort of security guys who are trying to stop them and to hold them back and all of that. So we're looking to maybe play that because my friend who I'm introducing it to is got he's got some Van Sars from Necromunda he wants to play with. I was like, yeah, cool. We can play Weirdo Munda. I love that. So that's one which we played before and had a lot of fun with. Oh God, I mean, there's a few of them. You put me on the spot like this, it's
you'll open the book tonight and you'll be
like, I'll sit down and be like, oh God, which other ones did we like? But yeah, I do remember the one you mentioned, where the strut your stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we were referring to it as the catwalk, because you just soon as you step out there, everyone's snapping at you, and yeah, you kind of like everyone was. There were three of us playing the game at the time, and it was this thing where we're all trying to like have our model kind of make the biggest scene as they approached, which kind of like, yeah, it's when you've got a scenario like that, it does really it drives the narrative forwards, which is nice, you know. And some of the uneven scenarios as well are really interesting. So we played another thing that we played, not from that book, but I had a couple of friends over. One person who I played a fair bit with, one person who was brand new to the game, and I GM'd a game where I had 150 points of demons who had infested this temple, and they were both playing 75-point teams of Imperium who come in to clear it out. And that kind of, do they work together? Do they work towards slightly different objectives that each other don't know about? Who's going to, what decisions are they making and why are they making them? It's, yeah, as I say, it's forcing decisions at the tabletop. That's what I want to see. Yeah, because as I said, when you force a decision at the tabletop, you create the narrative. If you're not asking questions, if questions don't get asked of you, and it's all pretty straightforward, and you go, yeah, okay, well, you've made that move. Well, the logical thing for me to do is this. Well, that doesn't really pose any questions. That doesn't create an interesting experience for me. Whereas if I put someone out there and now on the board, and you've then got to go, right, well, do I hit that person now, knowing they've already activated, but they are a potential danger next turn? Or do I go for someone else who hasn't activated, who is not quite as exposed, but will reduce my options within that round? Yeah. I think that's interesting. And that's, again, where you going back to this whole competitive versus narrative. I'm not sure it's really a true dichotomy. I don't think you have one or the other. I'm quite a competitive person. When I sit down at a table, I like to win. It's not the be-all and end-all. I'm perfectly fine when I don't win, and the narrative becomes part of the reason for playing more, or becomes more of the reason for playing, should we say, when that doesn't happen. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to sit down with someone necessarily and go, right, well, I know I can beat you, so what's the point? Like, if we're going to do something, if I know that, for example, I have a stronger team, then I will give the other person another advantage. You know, maybe they have an extra 15, 20 points to make it unbalanced, but still competitive. You know, you can have unbalanced games that are competitive, I think, depending on how you lay the terrain out and what objectives you put in front of the game. And for me, I want both elements there. But yeah, I know that not everyone agrees with that.
No, I think you make a good point that they're not mutually exclusive. I wonder if one of the reasons that I don't maybe consider myself overly competitive with tabletop gaming is because I've not got a lot of experience playing the same game a lot of times.
Right.
So, you know, well, Robert, who I play with, who's been on the podcast a lot, the game we've played the most together is Rangers of Shadowdeep, and we've been cooperating. So we've had much less games where we played against each other, and usually when we do, it's the first or second time playing something. So I wonder if it's just a hesitancy to you know, maybe because I know the rules slightly better because I own the book and I've read it a few times, I could probably stomp on them a bit. So I wonder if there's I bet if we were getting together every week and doing something like, you know, a wee game of Brutal Quest, which is what I'm playing now a lot, or Space Weirdos or whatever, the competitive nature of it would ramp up, but in a good way. Like, you know, we'd both get better at the game, we'd both know it better, and we'd both definitely be wanting to win, but, you know, we'd draw the line at arguing over half an inch or that. Maybe we wouldn't, I don't know, maybe we'd be boxing by the end of it, but...
It's interesting you say that. Like, I definitely think knowing the game better does encourage more competitiveness to a degree, because, you know, you're both then able to do more things with the rules. And, you know, you're right. Like, when offering opportunities for things to get close, whenever things get close, that's when I get more competitive. When things are obviously getting wider and wider apart, I get less competitive. It matters less to me. But when things are close, so I said about my couple of friends who I play quite regularly with, we played a campaign not that long ago. It was a series of 5 games, and over the 5 games, but I took the lead in game 2 and held on to it in going into the final game. And the way the points had worked out, it literally came down to the final activation in the final game to decide whether either I or my friend, who had failed to win any games but had always stayed in or around, won the overall campaign. And so, like, we were both desperate to win this final game, but because it was that close right the way to the end. And yeah, I played other games where, you know, we played Sword Widows a few weeks back, and we're experimenting with the game at the moment. We haven't played too many games of it yet, and the other 2 were getting very competitive with each other because they were both right in it. But my guys got taken out quite early on, and I was down to just a couple of guys, and I couldn't get my stuff to work. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do at this point? Right, this is now all about my last guy, who was an assassin, trying to take out his target and get out of there. And could he get out? Could he kill them and get out alive? He failed to kill them, but he did get out alive. So it was then all about his escape, and that was the bit which caught my imagination. So yeah, I think there's a lot of value in both sides. That said, I'm not sure I'd ever be that interested in playing a lot of tournaments, because I think maybe that would draw out too much competitiveness in me, and I don't know. I have played Gaslands in tournament, which is a wonderful game. Probably the most fun I've ever had at a table is playing Gaslands. Yeah, most of the time I lose that game because it's all about carnage, and I just, carnage is number one for me when you play that, because there's a rule which is literally the rule of carnage. Whatever the worst thing that could happen to everyone involved, particularly the person it's happening to, that's what happens, which is a great rule to have at a table.
If we go back then, like we're talking a wee bit about the games that you play these days after coming back into the hobby, but let's go back in time to your first encounter with. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be Games Workshop. I may be wrong. Like, what was the sort of origins there?
So, the first time I saw Games Workshop, I remember I would have been about 8 or 9, I guess, and there were the older kids at school, and they were in a classroom, and there was this tape. My friend was like, "You've got to come and see this. You've got to come and have a look at this game that the older kids are playing." So I went in and I looked at it, I was like, wow, there's all this scenery and models, and like, I can't remember how good the scenery was, right? It's probably all homemade, like by sort of 11, 12-year-olds, so it probably wasn't that great. The painting probably wasn't as amazing as I remember, but I remember it being just like mind-blowing. And I want to play this. So that was my first contact, and my older cousin was into it. And so he used to show me bits and pieces as well. So that was kind of like how I came into it, and it was very much 40k, second edition 40k, in the early 90s, with a big box, painting up all my Space Marines. My brother got the Orcs, I was Ultramarines, and yeah, that was how I came into it. Played. We had a few of the ancillary games, so Blood Bowl, which I loved. Blood Bowl was a great game. We never painted the miniatures. In fact, I actually just last year painted up all my Blood Bowl miniatures, all the 2 Blood Bowl teams for it, a special character for each, with the intention of giving it to my nephew, but I think he needs another. he's 8. I think another year or 2 maybe before I give him that. So they're finally painted, so I need to get that on a table and play that at some point. Space Hulk, which is still one of the best games I've ever played. Love that game. I'm so good. I can't find it. It's somewhere at my mum and dad's. Lord knows where. And then I picked up Necromunda and fell in love with Skirmish Gaming. That was the first Skirmish game I played. Probably one of the early proper sort of skirmish games coming out. I mean, I know first edition was very much that kind of like handful of models, but as we think of skirmish games these days, it's probably like the precursor. And I fell in love with that game. I played so much of it, a lot of it solo, because I lived in the middle. I come from a farming family, living in the middle of nowhere. Trying to find people to play games with was difficult at times. And got into my mid-teens, and a lot of my friends stopped playing. I still wanted to play, but where was I going to go and play? So I played solo, and played campaigns solo, and then eventually kind of went, well, if I've not got anyone to play with, what's the point? And girls became more interesting. The same story as everyone, I'm sure. But yeah, and I remember that Necromunda was my last game that I really played. I kind of fell out of 40k with 3rd edition. Um, just got there was a couple of things that annoyed me coming towards the end of second edition and the shift over to third. One thing was I remember being really upset that I couldn't have squats and that they got discontinued because I really wanted a squat army. So I ended up collecting Chaos instead, which was great, and I still love the Chaos models. They look brilliant, and that they're fun. Just that idea of carnage and mayhem, and Chaos has become a lot more defined now than it was back when I was first playing. But Nurgle and Khorne were the two gods that my army were devoted to. They seem to work fairly well together. But then when third edition came along, I found out that you couldn't throw grenades anymore. That really annoyed me. As sort of 14, 15-year-old Ed was like, what? Why? I have to put my grenade on a vehicle. What was the point of that? Sorry, I'm about to swear. I'll try not to. What's the point of that? That's weird. Like, I understand, like, putting a bomb on and, like, moving away. That sounds cool, but suddenly I can't. My templates are all gone. No templates. No, this isn't for me. Weirdly enough, though, I think it's probably third edition is probably the one, if I ever played 40k again, is the one I'd want to go back and have a look at because it's so rules light. But yeah, that's kind of my journey as a kid. And then, as I say, sort of 15, 16, I kind of moved away from it. Felt it was getting quite expensive, which you look at the prices compared to now, like it's quite funny. But yeah.
Do you remember your first White Dwarf or anything like that?
My first White Dwarf, I couldn't. I've got a pile of them upstairs. I know I've got some of the sort of 150 onwards. I probably have some earlier ones, certainly read earlier ones. I probably came into the game in sort of 90, 92, 93. And as I say, like, Games Workshop was a long way from where I lived. I lived just outside a place called Aylesbury, which was not the nicest town in the world. Still isn't. But the nearest Games Workshop to me when I first got into the game was in Oxford, which was 45 minute drive away. So being a 10-year-old, you're not going there unless your mum and dad take you. And your mum and dad aren't going to take you there on a regular basis. I used to go 2 or 3 times a year. And then eventually one opened in Milton Keynes, which was a bit closer. That was about 20 minutes drive away. And so, I didn't get as much access to stuff as perhaps I would have liked. But the editions that I did have, I kind of read and reread. And I saw these, the names of like Gabthorpe and people like that, and they were just my heroes. They looked so cool with their long hair and their sort of heavy metal t-shirts and stuff like that.
Do you remember your first trip to the Games Workshop store then?
Yeah, I do. So we went to Oxford and I wanted a box of models. I got was it a Devastator squad or was it a tactical squad? I think it would have been a tactical squad. I got the Devastator squad later on, but a tactical squad of Marines. And they were my first models that I bought. Mum and Dad bought me. But actually, just thinking about this, my very first entry into tabletop gaming, which was probably more kitchen floor gaming, was Warmaster. Not Warmaster, the Battlemaster. That's the one. Which I think you've mentioned in the past was one of your gateway games as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The ogre and the castle. I say the castle, the tower.
The tower was brilliant. I still got the tower.
Yeah.
And the cannon, where you could bounce the cannonball through the other guy's units,
Yeah.
but you didn't know whether your ball would reach them or not. And again, that uncertainty was just brilliant.
Yeah, the mat was brilliant. The hex on it, it was a kind of, I don't know, PVC type mat in the river. Just great game, great box set. Everything you need. Like I remember opening that at Christmas and like I died and gone to heaven sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It was so exciting. You know, it was that. Suddenly I've got an army. I've got two armies. Two big armies.
And they're going
to go against each other. Yeah. It was just, it was the best.
Aye. So you had Battle Masters then. So was that like your first?
That was
game. Yeah.
That was my first box game. So that would have been probably about 9. I probably came home from school and told my parents, this is the game that I saw, this is what I want. And then that Christmas, that's what I got.
Aye, very similar.
And then it would have been another year or two before I got second edition. So yeah.
So when you were kind of, you know, on your way out of the hobby for a period, you were sort of playing Necromunda and that. So when you put everything away, or when you came back, like how much have you recovered from that period? And I know you've said that Space Hulk's still missing. So what's the state of play?
So there's about half the stuff I can't find. I think it's somewhere at my mum and dad's, assuming it has not been thrown out by accident or whatever. It probably still is somewhere in their loft. But yeah, like I said I had a Chaos army. Well, most of that army, don't know where that is. Can't find that. All these Terminators and Devastators and a Dreadnought and all sorts of really, really cool stuff, which I cannot find. A lot of the Orcs I can't find. Found all the Gretchen, all the plastic Gretchen. Got all of those. So great fun painting them. Yeah, they're still brilliant. There's so much character to them. They're just fun. I know they're monopose and they all look the same, but they're just I just like them. I can't find that. So I can't find the Space Hulk. Can't find most of my Chaos army. There's some Orcs that are missing. Some Imperial Guard that are missing. So it's about half. I say maybe up to half the collection that I can't find. But the other half is great, you know, and I've been playing around with it and painting bits up and then going, oh, look at the new shinies and getting distracted by something else. So I've got loads more miniatures I need to revamp and refurbish from when I was younger. But also a whole bunch of new stuff, which I probably didn't need, but oh my God, it's so pretty.
I wonder about that. Like, there's a maybe 5 to 10% chance that up my mum and dad's attic is my copy of 40k second edition, I think it was, and Epic Space Marine, Blood Bowl. I had that. You know, so say a 5 to 10% chance that those boxes are there, and there'll be a decent amount of miniatures in all of them. And of course, like, it would be brilliant to get them. But it would partly be slightly stressful because I'd just have like all these old miniatures that I would want to just like flock to them and you know, start working on them, so that it wouldn't come without its cost. Like, it would be brilliant to have them, but it would totally throw me because I'd be like, oh, look at this! Like, there'd be stuff that I'd totally forgotten about, and suddenly the paint stripper's out.
Oh yeah, but I started with that. I started stripping some milk models, and then I stopped myself because I was like, actually, some of these are my history of gaming. You know, some of them I'm going to still strip. Don't get me wrong, because they're lovely models, and I did a rubbish job when I was 12. But some of them weren't that badly painted, or you know, or just need a little bit of touching up here and there. And you know, actually, those were how my brother and I used to play with them. And there's there's a real joy of looking back at them and going, yeah, I remember that guy. He did things on the battlefield, and I got my victory, or I got beaten. And there's other models which never got painted. I mean, we played with a lot of bare metal and a lot of bare plastic, as well as painting models. We did paint a lot, but not everything got painted. So I've tried to focus on the stuff that didn't get painted, like those Blood Bowl minis, rather than stripping, because, as I say, I think there's value in some of the poorly painted models that we did when we were younger, and they still hold memories the way that they were.
Our question of the month for February 2024 is Warhammer the Old World. Will you be playing it? If so, why? And if not, why not? I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this one. Head on over to bedroombattlefields.com/voicemail to record your audio feedback, and we'll look to play it on a future episode. And feel free to give a wee shout out to your own podcast, YouTube channel, Instagram account, or any other hobby content that you create. That link again is bedroombattlefields.com/voicemail. And now, back to the episode. How much painting do you get done on average each week?
It varies massively. At the moment, I'm pretty focused because I've given myself this big project for February, and so I'm modelling and painting most days. I'm not this evening because I'm chatting with you, and that's fine. But there'll be times where I'll do 20 minutes to 2 hours most days, and there'll be times where I won't touch a brush for a week, 2 weeks. I'm trying to be a little bit more consistent, but as I say, at the moment I've got this project that I'm working on, which is I've given myself a deadline for, and so I'm like, no, I've got to do a little bit every day. So even if I miss the deadline, I'm still progressing.
What is the project?
I don't mind if I miss it. So I'm building an undead army, or specifically a Hellenic skeleton horde. War Games Atlantic have released some wonderful miniatures, skeleton miniatures, which have kind of Greek theming to them. And you can get some infantry ones, and they very recently released some cavalry and chariots as well. And I was like, oh, well, I was interested in the old world, but, wasn't too sure whether I wanted to play it or not. And then I came across, I mentioned Gaslands earlier, the creator of Gaslands, Mike Hutchinson. He's just releasing, we're just about to release a game called Hobgoblin, which is a rank and flank game. And I was like, I want to play a rank and flank game, but I'm not sure about the old world. And then I came across Hobgoblin, which is miniature agnostic. You build your own units. It's very flexible, very rules-light, very fast-paced, all the things that I like in games. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to build an army for that. What am I going to build? Well, I'm a bit of a lazy painter. I like to get things tabletop ready and then play. It frustrates a few of my friends who are very good painters because they're like, you can get better. I'm like, I know I can, but I also want to play games and I want to move on to the next load of miniatures. So I will paint to a standard that I'm happy with to put them on the table. And I want to build a whole army. I've not built an army since I was a kid. I want to do this all in one go, but I'm aware that this can be quite a stressful thing to do, and that a lot of people, they build their army and then they end up selling it because it just becomes too much, and they put it away and they never look at it again. I didn't want to do that. So if I do a skeleton horde, I can spray them all white, paint the weapons and hats and other bits of armor and stuff, and put some wash over them, do a bit of dry brushing, and that's a model, right? So I can do quite a lot of those quite easily. So it seemed like a manageable way of building an entire army. So I'm trying to build what would equivalently be about a 2,000 point army if you were playing Old World in a month. So I've got, as I say, I've got these Wargames Atlantic skeletons. So I've got some hoplites. I've got some heroes with swords and shields. I've got some bowmen. Made some special characters out of those as well, along with some other bits from the bits box. I like my skeletons anyway, so I had a few old bits from other sprues that I had lying around. Skull set from Games Workshop Skull set, which is really really useful both for basing but also for this project. I had a whole load of beast skulls, and I was like, yeah, I'll put some of these beast skulls on for the special characters to signify, and they'll make them sort of stand out a bit more. I know War Bases is a company that you've mentioned in the past, and I'd gone to them to get my bases and my movement trays, and then I saw they did siege weapons as well, and so I got a couple of ballistas. They're like £2 each. I'm like, yeah, perfect. That's my siege weaponry. I got a couple of ballistas, and I'd already bought some monsters which were from Reaper, which were skeletons. So I got a skeletal minotaur, a manticore, and a dragon. And so I mounted one of the horsemen. I mounted one of the horsemen onto the back of the dragon, so he's now a dragon rider, a skeletal dragon, which is pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that model. And then bought a skeletal cyclops and some things like that. So I've got monsters, I've got infantry, I've got cavalry, I've got chariots, I've got artillery. So I feel like I've got a really nicely balanced army. And the plan was to try and do, as I say, to do all this in a month, if possible. I want to have fun with it, so I'm not punishing myself, but I do constantly want to keep moving forwards. So I am conscious that I need to do things every day for it, or every other day. I don't want to go more than one day off at a time without at least sitting down and doing a little bit, because those little bits of progression build up over time. So even if I don't quite do it all, I'm about halfway through the month now, and everything's built and primed. I've started painting. But even if I don't get everything done, it's not the end of the world. It'll be mostly there because I've been doing stuff all the time. And that'll just be finishing things off. So
is that part of a like official paint challenge anywhere, or is it just a personal objective?
It's a personal objective. So I've been thinking probably for about 6 or 7 months I want to build an army, and I thought about doing various things, and the old world was something that interested me, because actually the game that I nearly picked up and then didn't was Warhammer Fantasy Armies. I have a handful. I've got some Breton archers and some Grail Knights, because I was going to build a Breton army. I like the idea of all the King Arthur stuff. And then I kind of fell away from tabletop game. So it was a game that I was interested in, and I just get frustrated with some of the philosophy and approach at Games Workshop itself. I think it's not supportive of its hobby. Don't think it's supportive of the people involved in the hobby. Some of the stories you hear, at least anyway. And so I was like, well, there's got to be other ways to do this. And, at the end of the day, I could proxy this across probably to a Tomb King's army fairly easily. So if I did actually really want to decide, I'll dip my toe in with a couple of mates, I could proxy things over. But yeah, no, it's, as I say, it was a challenge I thought would be interesting to try and do. I'm only going to do it once. I think building an army in a month is too much. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I've given myself a year, so...
That's a much more sensible way of doing it. It's a much healthier way of doing it. I don't have kids, so, at least I have spare time. Like, if you've got kids as well, you've got your little girl, who, she's got to take priority over even your armies. She has to.
Does she? Does she?
Well, you know,
I'll get her involved soon.
I'm about to say, if you want her to play games with you, yeah, she does. I know you've got her painting, which her painting looks good, man.
Better than mine.
I wasn't going to say anything, but
have you got any games on the horizon? Anything booked in, lined up?
So yeah, as I said, I've got some Space Widows into this week, introducing another person into the game. And actually, next Monday, I am meeting up with William. So William, who's really lovely guy. It turns out that he lives about 25 minutes down the road from me. In fact, he lives 2 minutes from one of the shops that I work in occasionally. So we met for a beer not that long ago and had a good old chatter about gaming. And he's promised to introduce me to, I think he plays a lot of 10mm, 15mm stuff, which is not a size that I've played. You know, I've been strictly 28mm. And some historical as well, which again is not something I've really dipped my toe into. A little bit of Napoleonics, but fantasy Napoleonics with Silver Bayonet. So it's not really proper historicals. So yeah, I'll be really interested to play that and have a new gaming experience. It's what it's all about, right? It's like trying new things, new experiences.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of the Tabletop Miniature Hobby Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then please do share it with someone else you think might enjoy it too. And be sure to check out our Discord community of like-minded hobbyists, which you could find at bedroombattlefields.com/Discord. It'd be great to see you in there.